Hello, welcome back. This is part 3 of my series Buying Commercial. And if you have a look behind me, that's the Melbourne Central Business District. Actually, no, I'm lying. It's not. It's the Box Hill Central Business District. And for those of you that have lived in Melbourne, you would have seen how Box Hill has really changed over the years. And I'll give you some closer snapshots of how the area has changed. The area has just become filled with multi-level developments, predominantly residential buildings, but also office buildings. And in this video, I want to talk about retail shops. You'll remember in part 1 of Buying Commercial, I talked a little bit about the mindset change that's required for those people that are looking to buy commercial properties and that are used to thinking about residential. So there's a significant mindset change that needs to occur, especially because commercial assets are income producing assets, and therefore the way the properties are valued are on using an income approach or the capitalization of income. So there's a mindset change that needs to occur. The other thing, if you remember in part 2 of my series on Buying Commercial, I spent some time talking about the Retail Leases Act, because the Retail Leases Act is the governing statutory act that covers most of the commercial properties here in Melbourne. Don't let the word retail confuse you. For those properties that are under 1,000 square metres and where the tenant is not a public company, it's a private company, the Retail Leases Act applies. So that governs most of the retail tenancies here in Victoria. So when we're thinking about retail shops, think about 2 broad categories: strata and non-strata. Strata are properties that have a common area. Therefore, there are multiple owners that own properties in a building on a title with common area. And the Owners Corp, which is effectively the owners, is run by an Owners Corp manager. And those properties have Owners Corp fees, strata fees, principally building insurance, but you're also paying for a manager to oversee that common area. The other type of property is non-strata. So non-strata is no different to, for example, a terrace, where you've got one title, one building, one owner that's owned by the one owner, and that particular owner can develop the property up, they can develop it back. With strata, you can't really do much with the property in terms of subdividing it further. All you can do is maybe improve the fit out. So think of shops as having those 2 broad categories, strata and non-strata. And typically with strata, because what you're doing is only buying an income stream, as opposed to non-strata, where you can actually further develop the property and you can improve it. The strata properties, for example, typically have a higher yield, right? Because there's not much you can do with it. Whereas non-strata, they typically sell at a lower yield because the owner can, if they like, improve the property theoretically. So broadly speaking, you've got strata, high yield, non-strata, lower yield. Now, in addition to those 2 broad groups, I just want to talk a little bit about retail shops. What are they, and what's the difference between a really good retail shop and one, if you like, maybe on the fringes, that's not considered, from my perspective anyway, an investable retail shop. Okay, let's talk about something that's really important. What makes a good retail shop and what makes a shop that's not so good. Think about what we talked about in part 1 of my series around Buying Commercial. What we talked about is, what is a commercial property? Commercial property is one where you have a tenant that runs an enterprise and a business, and that business pays an occupancy cost, and that occupancy cost is the rent, okay? And the rent is how we value commercial properties. Now remember, with a business, a business has 2 types of customers. It has new customers. So these are new customers that come in off the street or off the internet or somewhere, and it's got existing customers that keep going. So think of this great coffee shop that I come here to regularly, Mr. and Miss. It makes great coffee, so I'm a regular customer. I'm not a new customer, I'm a regular customer. So this business won't grow if all I'm doing is coming all the time. Now, sure, if I'm coming more often, it's going to grow, but it needs to attract new people and new customers, right? So a retail business relies on new customers, building the customer base and therefore the revenue base. And it also requires existing customers to keep coming and hopefully to keep coming more often. So what it relies on is what we call pedestrian traffic. So pedestrian traffic is really, really critical, and you've seen some pedestrian traffic there, right? So pedestrian traffic is really, really critical in order for a business to thrive. And therefore, and that's where, if you like, the revenue comes from. So people that come into the shop, either walk-ins or potentially people that buy stuff over the internet that know where the shop is, and so retail shops sell goods and services. So obviously, if you're selling services, and the services are, if you like, on the premises, people need to walk in through the shop. If you're selling goods, they can walk in through the shop or they can buy off the internet. Either way, whichever way you look at it, more customers are required. So what makes a good retail shop? Well, a great retail shop is one when you've got lots of pedestrian traffic. So it's pretty simple, it's not rocket science. So there are two types of retail properties. There are ones that have significant retail traffic, so what we call impulse buying. So there's so much traffic, people see the shop, they walk in, they walk out, and they're buying on impulse. The other type of retail shop is what we call destination retail, where people will drive to a shop because they know it's there, not because of impulse buying. So that separates the two, and I want to talk a little bit about what this is. So you've got two, so you've got non-strata and strata, then you've got impulse shopping and destination shopping, and that's really, really critical when you're thinking about a retail property. So this property here that you've seen behind me, this is, if you like, in an interesting area. It's in a mixed-use zone where you have a combination of residential, industrial, commercial. But although you're seeing a little bit of traffic here on the footpath, this is not the type of retail property that you would classify as impulse retail, meaning that people are just walking down the street and they see what's in through the glass window and through the plate glass window, and they want to buy it. So it's not that type of property. It's what we call a destination retail. So I wanted to have a coffee. I'm driving maybe 2 kilometers to come here because I know the coffee's great and it's kind of where I want to go. And obviously, coffee customers are very loyal. And so this particular retail shop you would classify as a destination retail premises, not an impulse premises, which I'll video a few shops that, if you like, are impulse. So when we're looking at retail, I just want you to think about those 4 core groups. So you've got strata, non-strata, and you've got impulse buying and destination buying. So that and really you can mix and match. So you can get strata with impulse, you can get non-strata with impulse buying, or you can get strata with destination, non-strata with destination. And those 4 different types of properties will determine the price that you're paying for it, the income that can be generated from that property, the yield, the cap rate, and all those sort of things going together. It's like a sort of a cocktail. And that's why buying commercial is easy, but it's also quite difficult, because you need to be able to, it's like a bowl of spaghetti. You've got to be able to pull the strands out and kind of analyze them and really understand what you're buying. Look, that's why I highly recommend an advocate, or you need to surround yourself with people that are experienced at buying commercial property. But when you think about buying commercial and you're thinking about non-specialised security and you're thinking about buying retail, I want you to think about those 4 broad areas and combinations of properties, okay? When we look at a retail business, there are 2 metrics typically that a retail business looks at, okay? Just want to briefly talk about this and how it relates to what we're talking about. So the 2 metrics are customer count, and the other one is what we call ticket. So customer count is just simply how many customers are coming through the front door. So if you've got a retail business that has 1,000 customers a week, that's great. But what if you go from 1,000 to 2,000? You can see there, if you go from 1,000 customers a week to 2,000 customers a week, what do you think is going to happen to the revenue? Do you think that business is going to be able to afford to pay more rent? Of course. So customer count is really important. What drives customer count? It's pedestrian traffic. So the more people that are walking on the footpath, the better the business. The more people that come to your store, even if it's a destination store, the better. But with destination stores, it's the business that's driving the customers, not actually the property, right? Now, unless obviously this is done up nicely, it looks nice, but it's actually the business, so it's the operator that's driving that traffic. It's not really the real estate. So what we want to do is buy real estate that drives traffic. So even if that business leaves, the next person that comes in gets to benefit from all that traffic. So customer count is really important to the business. The other thing is what we call ticket price. So ticket price is customers that come to the business, we want them to spend more money, right? So, but that's not related to the real estate. So that's related to the business. What's related to the real estate is the customer count. So a good shop is one that has increasing customer count, or where the tenant looks at the property and says, wow, I can really get a fairly large customer count for my business in this area, because there's a lot of impulse buying, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic. So pedestrian traffic equals good retail properties. So the higher the pedestrian traffic, the better the retail shop. If pedestrian traffic is increasing in the future, and potentially if there's more population moving into an area without additional supply, what that will do is have an upward impact on rents. And that's the type of investment that we want to buy. So we want to buy retail shops that have high pedestrian traffic, or where that pedestrian traffic might grow in the future. And they can be strata or non-strata. That's really another subject, another topic for another day. But today, I just want to talk about the two types of retail: impulse retail and destination retail. And I just want to show you some examples of that. So here we're along Station Street here in Box Hill, and if you have a look, seriously, if you were here 10 years ago, none of these buildings were here 10 years ago. So you can just see the amount of money that's poured into Box Hill. So what this does, of course, is it creates a fairly busy activity centre, and with many more people. And these people eventually have to come out through the front door onto the pedestrian, and they're either get into their cars and go elsewhere, or they walk up to the shops. And of course, if they walk up to the shops, they're going to spend money. They're going to become impulse buyers, and those businesses that are in those shops will be earning more revenue. They'll be able to afford to pay more rents, and as the rent goes up, the actual property becomes a lot more valuable, and the land underneath it increases in value. So that's retail. That's impulse retail, and impulse retail shops make up the best shop. So if we think now about the Box Hill Central Business District, for those of you that remember 10, 15, 20 years ago, there were hardly any buildings there above maybe 2 or 3 stories, and now you'll see that there's so many. And what does that do? What it does, it creates this massive population gain in that particular area. And of course, what do people do when they live there? They walk along the footpath. And therefore, if you have a look, some of the rents in that particular area have gone up dramatically, and so have the values of the retail. So shops in that particular precinct you will classify as impulse retail, and we'll have a look in a second, right? So what you've got there is you've got a lot of people that have moved into an area. You've got a lot of people walking on the footpath, and as they're walking on the footpath, they're buying, and they're doing things on impulse. They're not actually thinking, I want to walk into that particular shop. Here at Mr. and Miss, though, people need to drive out here. They need to find parking. They need to get out of the car. They need to have a look and see how long the parking meter is, and etc. So they need to time their visit, and therefore this is more of a destination where I love coming here, but it's not the type of property that I would buy as an investor, okay? Although it does have other benefits. Potentially you can develop it, right, because it's non-strata, so you can develop it and you can build residential, you can go up, so there's other things. So if I was looking for something that I could buy and develop potentially, that's a different story. But here we're talking about just buying retail, just buying shops. So So let's have a look now at Box Hill Central, and let's have a look at an example of impulse retail and what makes up good retail potentially. So this is a good example of impulse retail. It's grand final day, so a lot of the shops here are closed, but you can see here people are just walking around and stopping and buying on impulse. So they're not necessarily coming to a specific shop as a destination. They're just simply pedestrian traffics, and obviously today's fairly quiet, but it's a good example. Any one of these retail shops is potentially got good rental uplift moving forward because of the population uplift, and you've got the ATO building here overseeing everything. And where the ATO building is, this is a really good sign. The suburban rail loop, so the government's spending money within this region, so it sees it as an activity centre. And some of you will be you'll be cognizant of the some of the recent releases, some of the recent focus on activity centres by the state government, and they're wanting to see high-rise buildings, more density, more population in these activity centres. So if you cast your eye forward, you can obviously see that this particular area is going to have population growth, and with that will come rental growth, and with that will come market value increase. But hopefully this gives you a good idea of the difference between impulse retail and destination retail. So this is a really good example of impulse retail. This is investable retail commercial properties as far as I'm concerned. And destination retail can be pretty good as well, especially if you've got some really good tenants on long leases. But again, it really depends what the buyer's looking at, and certainly the buyer's brief will determine the asset allocation.